Welcome, everybody. We have a packed house, and it's great to see so many people here. We're going to get going. But firstly, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands we all meet on today. I am joining you from the land of the beautiful Gadigal people, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and also extend my respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here today. We do have a packed agenda with lots to get through. Well, you have been entered on mute, but you're very welcome to unmute when it comes to question time. Please also use the chat facility. We will refer to that during questions and answers if that's the way that's more comfortable for you. And the agenda today, after our welcome, is to hear from DCJ an overview of the specifications, find out what we've heard so far, open for questions and answers from the floor, and then we will be discussing the next steps. Gregory, I can see that you have your hand up. Did you want to put into your chat if you have something that you would like to raise? Are you able to hear us okay? Okay. Before we start, we want to, as Fams does, involve you in a pulse check. We want to know on your first impressions about how you're feeling about the specification. That helps us going forward, and it's great to see some mostly positive comments in there. So you just need to use the QR code, or you can use the menti.com and add in the numbers that you can see on the top of your screen. Wow. It's great to see that we have some neutral and positive and not too many concerns. And we're hoping by the end of today that we will at least be able to discuss the concerns that you have and maybe alleviate some of those. I'm sure DCJ are very happy to see some neutral and mostly positive. It must be scary pressing that button, Anthony, to say, here they are, and give us your feedback. Let me know, Lisa, when you think that we've...
So we've got 85 that have responded so far, but with 150 in the room, I just made another minute or so.
Yeah, I'm guided by you. It's great when you're on a call with this many people, even to see where your colleagues are sitting as well. So you're not on, you can feel you're not on your own if you're feeling you have concerns, or that you're still feeling a little neutral. You perhaps haven't had the opportunity to really have a deep dive into the specifications yet.
The balls keep coming, so wait till the balls slow down a bit. Would you like interactivity here?
Yes, we do. It's important to be able to interact. I'm a big fan of Menti. I was introduced to it as part of this job. And I love, even for me here sitting, the opportunity to see how people are feeling is really important before you move into a consultation. Margaret's talking about the fact that there's many neutrals concern me. Yes, that will be interesting for us to ask some more questions about. The neutral might be, oh, my chat is cutting out. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone is neutral, maybe they can put into the chat why they're feeling neutral. Sometimes they're neutral because they haven't had the opportunity to have a really good read yet.
Yeah.
And they've only been out for 2 weeks. So, and we've got plenty of time to go through those standards and have the consultation. And with this many people coming on a call, it's great to know that we've got plenty of people who are contributing and being part of a consultation.
I think we can move forward now, Susan. I think most people have...
Lovely. Thanks, Lisa. Well, I would now like to introduce Anthony Shannon, Director Early Intervention, and Claire Edmonds and Amanda Jones, Manager Early Intervention Evidence and Strategy, to talk us through the specifications. And so I will hand over to you, Anthony, to start.
Thanks, Susan. Before I start as well, I'd like to acknowledge country. I'm coming to you from Wongal country, pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to Aboriginal people here today. Thanks very much. It's great to be with you this morning. We're really keen to talk to you about the Targeted Early Intervention Program specifications. We're also really keen to hear your feedback, hear your questions, any issues or concerns that you have. It's really important that we hear your input. We've developed these program specifications, as kind of Claire and Amanda will go through in detail, off the back of a range of feedback from the sector and both our program evaluations of Targeted Early Intervention, Family Connect and Support. We've endeavoured to change and update the program in line with some of that feedback, and we've got a bit of time now to talk with you more about these specifications. So there'll be a number of sessions across the state, and if you do have any questions or comments, please feel free to engage today. And before I hand over to Amanda and Claire, I'd also like to acknowledge FAMS and thank FAMS for hosting this session. FAMS has been doing, as you all know, quite a bit of work supporting the sector through TEI recommissioning, and so I'd like to acknowledge that their advocacy for the sector and support for the TEI program as well. Okay, I'll hand over to Amanda and Claire. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. As Anthony said, my name is Amanda Jones. I'm the acting co-manager of the Evidence and Strategy team, and I'm here with my colleague Claire Edmonds, who is the manager of the Evidence and Strategy Early Intervention team. And today we're going to talk through some of the key changes that we're implementing as part of the draft program specifications. And I also just wanted to start off by thanking everyone who's attending today for taking time out of your day to speak with us and to listen to our presentation. Ultimately, it's a really good opportunity for us to hear your feedback. And of course, thank you to FAMS for organizing such a great session that has attracted so many participants. So for today, the way that we're going to run the session is that we are going to go through an overview of the key changes to the program specifications. We know some of you may have attended our presentations in the past, but there's also probably some of you that haven't had a chance to hear that yet. Following that, Claire is going to also talk about some of the sector feedback we've received and how we're trying to incorporate that into the program specifications. And then we'll hand over back to FAMS, and then follow that up with some questions. So we do ask that if you have questions that you please wait till the end of the presentation to ask them, since hopefully we'll help address some of those during our presentation. And if not, there will be plenty of time after to discuss them. Thank you. Next slide, please. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So this slide just talks to some of the key changes to the specifications that we've tried to implement. The first 5 I'll just briefly touch upon, since we've spoken a lot about them, or Anthony's spoken about them previously, and then the following ones we'll discuss in more detail in the upcoming slides. So as you've all probably already heard, we are integrating TEI and FCS into one program. And that comes about for a myriad of reasons. One was during the TEI evaluation provider survey, a lot of TEI providers noted that they weren't aware of FCS as a program. FCS and TEI have a lot of common outcomes that they're trying to achieve and target groups. So for this reason, we thought by integrating the 2 programs, we would be offering a more streamlined early support system, as well as hopefully reducing some of the administrative burden on providers who are delivering both services, and help improve the referral pathways between the 2 programs. With that being noted, Family Connect and Support will be maintained as a specific service model, and that's due to the fact that the Family Connect and Support evaluation has largely shown that the program is working quite well in its current format, and only minimal tweaks are needed. And some of those tweaks that we've made are getting rid of the weighted referral system and making more flexible service delivery timeframes. And our intention is that existing Family Connect and Support providers will continue to provide this service. We're also trying to increase the focus on early intervention. Again, this was feedback that we received from the TEI evaluation, or early insights that we've heard, that we would benefit by clarifying the role in the broader service sector. And we've done that through the program specifications, of course, noting there is still a valuable role played by those who provide community strengthening services in more of a prevention focused manner. We've also are looking to create a new name for the program, which you would all be aware of if you attended the FAM session for the name. We have received over, I think, 90 suggestions, which is amazing feedback. And we've recently just released TEI Inform, where we are giving the sector a chance to vote on the top 15 names. And we had a matrix where we considered different factors, and that's how we reduced the 90 down to 15. And once we get the top choices from the sector, we're going to present them to the minister, who will ultimately make the final decision. We've also updated the policy framework, so specifically in reference to how the program is assisting with family violence and also child safe standards. Going forward for the rest of the presentation, we'll speak more in detail about how we're simplifying and streamlining DEX reporting, how we're embedding evidence into the program, including through program-wide program logics. We're also going to discuss increased focus on cultural safety, including outcomes for Aboriginal people in the TEI outcomes framework and inclusion of the TEI service system outcomes and program requirements, including a greater focus on flexibility, which was some feedback we've also heard from the TEI evaluation, and Claire will speak to that in more detail in the upcoming slides. So this slide will take you through some of our thoughts on how we're trying to streamline the program activities and service types, specifically in relation to DEX reporting. Some of the feedback we also received from the provider survey, which would not be a surprise to any of you, was that DEX could be further streamlined. So that was a big focus of this program specifications draft and how we wanted to try to achieve that. So I'll take you through a few things that we've tried to implement. The first is the program activities. So as you all would know, as TEI providers, we have currently 5 different program activities. What we've tried to do is collapse those 5 program activities. So what was previously referred to as the stream is now going to be called a program activity, not to confuse you. So the new program activities will be community strengthening, family connect and support, and well-being and safety. And because we've gotten rid of the 5 different program activities, that means that we can reduce the duplication that previously occurred across multiple program activities. So for an example, if you were offering family capacity building under well-being and safety, you would have known that there were 2 different program activities that could have been reported under. Since we've reduced those program activities, family capacity building will only appear once under well-being and safety. And we did that with other program activity or other service types that were duplicative. So they should only appear once. The other thing we tried to do was look at the data, see what service types aren't really being used very often, and if they're needed in the program in the future. And one of those was business planning. We could see that it was only used a handful of times, so we thought that it probably wouldn't be needed in the program, so we removed it. Another thing that we tried to do is amalgamate service types together where it made sense to do so. So for an example, we know material aid is often offered as part of family capacity building. So rather than having 2 separate service types, we've amalgamated material aid into family capacity building, and you will see it if you look at the description under that service type. Material aid also appears under the youth individualized support service type, which is a new service type included to reflect the unique work being undertaken by the youth sector. And it also appears under information advice and referrals under community strengthening, and brokerage appears under family capacity building for family connect and support. And just to note, amalgamating the service types doesn't mean we don't recognize the value of the work that you do. It's about striking a better balance between how much and what to report on what, and with reflecting what's being delivered and the outcomes being achieved. Reporting separately on things like material aid may not always add the value to the data that we collect about the program. It just means more reporting for you. So this is some of the rationale behind why we've taken these steps. And of course, we're happy to hear further from you if you think that what you're offering isn't reflected in the service types. But we do think that we've tried to capture all the different types of services being offered under the program and just reduce the way that you have to report on them. So we're really interested in hearing your feedback around that. The next slide is who's TEI for. I don't think I need to talk too at length to this because as providers, you would well be aware of who the program is for. The target population for the program is children, young people, families, and communities within New South Wales who are in need. What's happened by amalgamating FCS and TEI is if you're a TEI provider, you'll have one additional target group, which is children and young people affected by a mental health condition. If you're a Family Connect and Support provider, you'll have two additional target groups, which is children and young people at risk of disengagement from school, family, and community, and young parents with known vulnerabilities or who are experiencing a number of hardships. We expect that probably most of you are probably already working with all of these target groups in any case. We have heard some concerns raised by providers on whether or not you have to work with all 5 target groups. We do want to emphasize that there's no requirement to work with all 5 target groups, that during your local planning stage of recommissioning, the districts in conjunction with you will work out who the target groups are and who is in requirement of need in your local area. So all 5 target groups is definitely not a program requirement. There's also been some concerns raised about the inclusion of children and young people affected by mental health conditions and whether there's an expectation that service providers will need to acquire specialist skills to work with this group. We just want to confirm this is not expected. The reality is we think that a lot of you are probably working with this group to begin with, and we would expect that that will continue. And if you do need to refer them to specialist support, then that happens where required. Thank you. So one of the key themes we're trying to achieve through this commissioning cycle is embedding the evidence we've been collecting over the last 3.5 years into the program further. So you may have seen the DCJ evidence portal, where we have a lot of different evidence reviews that have been commissioned over the last few years. One of our goals was looking at this evidence and embedding them into program-wide program logics. So you'll see that there's 5. The good news is we do not expect you to have to do 5 program logics, and I'll take you through that in a bit more detail. So the cultural safety and well-being program logic, you do not need to do an independent program logic for this. The idea is that you take the principles outlined in this program logic and you embed them into your service design and delivery. And by doing so, you'll be delivering a more culturally safe service. Family Connect and Support, again, we do not expect that you, if you're offering this, that you do an independent program logic, and that's due to the universal format that the program is delivered across New South Wales. Where you will need to do a new program logic is if you're offering services under community strengthening or well-being and safety. So cultural safety, we've heard previously that the program logic wasn't necessarily reflective of the work being undertaken by sector development organizations. So we did try to clarify how that program logic could be used for these organizations, whilst also aligning it to the important work being undertaken by those offering community strengthening services. Well-being and safety, children, families, and young people, you'll notice there's 2. And the reason why there's 2 different program logics is because the evidence is actually quite different depending on what your outcomes are that you're trying to achieve. So for example, if you're a youth service and your goal is youth socio-emotional well-being, the evidence to achieve that is going to be very different to the evidence if you're working with children and families and your goal is preventing child maltreatment. So we tried to differentiate them to help you out and sort of separate the evidence depending on what you're trying to achieve. So depending on who you're working with and what your goals are, that will help define which of these program logics you need to complete. Or if you're working with all of them, then you'll probably need to do program logics for all 3 of those different ones. We have included evidence and the theory of change columns into our program-wide program logics if you hadn't had a chance to look at them. And the idea is that you can use this when building your own individual program logic. We're also updating the program logic template and e-learning module to support you in developing your own individual program logics. And we're hoping that these resources will be available for you soon. Next slide, please. This slide talks about the core components approach that we're trying to embed into the program further. So the good news is that you're probably, if you're working with children and families under well-being and safety, you're probably already delivering some of the core components and you might not be aware of that. For an example, if you're delivering family capacity building under well-being and safety, then you're delivering on case management. And you can see through the 5 core components, we've mapped each of them to the different service types. And just to backtrack a bit, where we got the core components from, they come from the Preventing Child Maltreatment Evidence Review on the DCJ portal. And what happened was the researchers who were commissioned to undertake this study looked at a lot of different evidence-informed programs and determined 5 core components that were common across all these programs that were being successful in preventing child maltreatment. And those are the 5 core components you see on the screen. So engagement, case management, parental education, coaching and modeling, parenting, self-care and personal development, and building supportive relationships and social networks. So again, we have 2 columns here, one to show the current service types based off the specifications as they are now and how they map to the core components, and an updated version to show how the new service types map to the core components. So what is changing is that we're saying in instances where you're working with children and families, you try to deliver all 5 core components, because we know that's what will work in ultimately helping to prevent child maltreatment. We know that that's not always going to be the case, and for a myriad of reasons. For example, you might be a smaller provider who doesn't have the capacity to offer all 5 components, or it might not be your area of expertise, and that's perfectly fine. We don't expect that providers have to do it in every instance. What we are trying to encourage is where you can't offer all 5 core components, that you partner or you refer with other providers in your local area to help ensure that the families you're working with have access to all 5 core components where possible. Again, we know there will be times where that won't always be possible, because perhaps you're in a regional area where there aren't the services available, or you could be in an area where there are the services, but they're at capacity and they can't take on any new referrals. So we are taking a flexible approach with this, and we recognize it's not always going to be achievable, but this is something that we are encouraging providers to work towards where possible. We've also had some questions raised about the difference between core components and off-the-shelf programs, and I just wanted to speak a little bit about that further. So core components and off-the-shelf programs are actually not incompatible, but are rather, they're actually complementary. So manualized programs can help you deliver the core components. We are using the core components as the approach across the well-being and safety part of the TEI program, because there are some instances where limitations using purely manualized programs, and this allows us to incorporate a flexible evidence-based framework to service design. Core components also provide an option where there is no manualized evidence-based program known to be effective with a specific client group. There's also emerging evidence that highlights that the core components approach is implementable and effective. And again, this doesn't prevent the use of evidence-informed manualized programs where they're available and appropriate, provided it fits the needs of clients in a local context. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide talks to some resources that we're trying to prepare as part of the program specifications. So we've done a list of evidence-informed supported playgroups and evidence-informed parenting programs. So the evidence-informed supported playgroups, you should have seen this in the draft program specifications, and essentially what how that came about is we worked with our colleagues, our research colleagues in DCJ, and they looked at evidence-informed supported playgroup models and put together a list. For the evidence-informed parenting programs, we have some exciting news, which is that the draft list just got published today. So we definitely encourage you all to have a look at that when you have a chance. And the way that we comprise that list is we looked at a few different resources. So firstly, we looked at parenting programs that were part of our evidence reviews on the evidence portal. So the Preventing Child Maltreatment and the Reducing Child Maltreatment and Harm evidence reviews. And those parenting programs are added to the list. We also added some programs to the list from a 2017 evidence review that was undertaken by the Parenting Research Center for DCJ. But we knew that because of the really strenuous technical specifications, that there were also probably other parenting programs that were being delivered by the sector that were achieving good outcomes, but might not have been captured by those evidence reviews. So we worked with our colleagues in commissioning and planning and asked them to provide us with a list of parenting programs that are currently being delivered by the sector. What we did is we then worked with our research colleagues at DCJ to see if there was any evidence underpinning any of these programs. And if they found that there was evidence underpinning the program, they were included on the list. So it's actually quite comprehensive. There's just under 100 programs. The idea is it's meant to be a helpful resource, so I hope you find it as such. It sort of is like a bit of a snapshot into each of these 100 programs, because we realize that the sector has a lot of really important work they're undertaking, and to go and try to find evidence-informed parenting program would take a lot of time and research. So if you look at the list, it sort of has different categories, so target groups for each of the programs. It has a little bit of a snapshot about what the program is offering. Some links that you can click on if you want to find more information because you think maybe this program could work in my local context. And yeah, it's just meant to be a helpful resource that providers can look at. And the idea is that if you are trying to deliver a parenting program or a supported playgroup, you look at these lists first and you try to determine if there's a program that fits your local context that you can utilize and deliver. Again, these lists, we know they're not exhaustive, that there could be some really great programs that still haven't been captured, and we're open to hearing from you if that's the case. So you can provide feedback as part of the specification process and let us know if there are any programs maybe that we've missed out on and some of the evidence on around that program and why it's achieving positive results. Additionally, if during recommissioning or during the next commissioning or after commissioning has stopped in July 2025, and when you're trying to roll out these parenting programs, if there's a program that's still not on the list, you're welcome to speak to your commissioning and planning representative and show them the evidence around the program and have a discussion with them about why you want to deliver that. The one main thing that I want to call out is, of course, this doesn't apply to if you're delivering parenting programs or supported playgroups to Aboriginal clients. We understand that the evidence around what works for Aboriginal communities isn't necessarily there in the Western sense, and we don't want to be restrictive on service providers offering services that are going to work in their local context. What we do ask in this context is that you have regard to the Aboriginal-led early support evidence review that's on the DCJ website, and then you think about what will work in your local context and take into account local practitioner knowledge when designing a program for Aboriginal communities. And I think those are the main points I want to cover. So I'll hand you over to Claire, who will talk to strengthening cultural safety.
Thanks, Amanda. Hi, everyone. So the change I'm going to talk about to the specifications first up is around the program's commitment to strengthen cultural safety. This came through really loud and clear in both the TEI and FCS evaluations, that there's an opportunity for us to think about cultural safety in the program and really strengthen it. And we all know from experience and also from evidence that a lack of cultural safety, racism and mistrust are significant barriers to Aboriginal children, young people and families and communities from accessing the services that they need. So the program specifications really strengthen our goal around cultural safety, and that's part of the broader policy context, including state and national initiatives that you'd be all very well aware of, Closing the Gap, Family as Culture, the National Framework for Protecting Australia's Children, and of course the implementation of the Aboriginal Case Management Policy. And of course, this also aligns closely with the targeted in our program to increase investment in the Aboriginal community-controlled sector. So the specifications talk at that level, but they also provide direction on how we can strengthen cultural safety at a service level. To do this, we're asking all non-Aboriginal community-controlled organisations in the TEI program to adopt the principles and practice elements of the cultural safety and wellbeing program logic, which is drawn from the evidence. and to use that in their service design and delivery. We also ask that service providers read and be familiar with the 8 key features in the Aboriginal-led Early Supports Evidence Review, and that Aboriginal community-controlled organisations also consider these in their service design and delivery as well. And that is drawn from a separate evidence review which looked at what works in Aboriginal early support programs evidence reviews, and both of those are available on the DCJ evidence portal for you to read at length. But we've taken, sort of synthesized what's in those evidence reviews and put them in the program logic for you. As Amanda mentioned, there isn't a need to produce a separate program logic about that, but what we will be asking is that DCJ contract managers, through the life of your contract, monitoring and discussing your progress in terms of adopting the principles through your contract management meetings, and they'll do this at a minimum quarterly. We've continued our commitment to Indigenous data sovereignty and Indigenous data governance in the specifications. Obviously, those are really important in terms of our data collection approaches, and we want to strengthen our system to be more in line with these principles. We've already made some progress on this, but we know that we've got still some way to go. Using the DEX system allows you as organisations to make the data that you capture available and accessible to the communities that you work with at any point in time, increasing transparency and accountability to all communities, including Aboriginal communities. This data, of course, is also rolled up, aggregated and made available, publicly available through the TEI and FCS dashboards, which also furthers that aim. Like I said, we want to do more work in this area, and we think there's an opportunity during this time that we're updating the specifications to really think more about what culturally appropriate and safe reporting and data collection systems would look like. So this is something that we're talking to Aboriginal community-controlled organisations and Aboriginal staff, both in TEI and FCS providers, through our upcoming community partner forums. We also want to keep working with providers at a local level to support any initiatives that you may have that really further these principles and in terms of the needs of your local community. And we're really open to hearing back from you about what that would look like. Through program implementation, and we heard really loudly and clearly from the sector, and it's been reinforced by feedback that we heard from Aboriginal community-controlled organisations in the evaluation, that there are no cultural outcomes in the TEI outcomes framework. So we'll be using this consultation period, again, through that opportunity with the Aboriginal Community Partner Forums, to hear from the ACO sector and from Aboriginal staff what those outcomes should look like for Aboriginal people in the TEI client outcomes framework. We've already started this process through an initial session, and during that, we heard about the importance of identity, connection to culture, belonging, self-determination and choice. We also know from those conversations that there's a need for flexibility and to put a local lens on outcomes. And that, of course, Aboriginal people should be designing solutions and services for their communities. We also know that it's going to be important for us to think about what measuring and reporting looks like alongside these outcomes as they take place, as they take shape for the new program, and that will be part of those discussions we have. We know those conversations take time, and we want to make sure that they're meaningful and genuine conversations. So we have this consultation period now up until the 16th of August, but we would like to work with the sector beyond that to make sure that we get it right. On to the next slide. So the program specifications contain a new section, service system outcomes and program requirements. There are 7 service system outcomes that describe the key features of the TEI service system that we're aiming to reach together as a sector to achieve positive client and community outcomes. What we're asking of providers is that you take an approach to service delivery that works towards contributing to these service system outcomes, and the program requirements that we spell out in the specifications are kind of the way that you can get there. So you can see the service system outcomes up there on the screen, and maybe you've read about them as well through the specifications. They're nothing new. You're probably well familiar with this way of working, but I'll just go through kind of what we're aiming for. So we're looking to adopt a strengths-based approach to service delivery. We're looking to be flexible, accessible, and responsive. We want to be culturally safe and inclusive for all clients, but we've included specific requirements around cultural safety for Aboriginal and culturally and linguistically diverse clients. We want to provide meaningful client and community engagement by skilled and competent staff. We want to provide coordinated support and referral pathways across the service system through networking and partnerships. We want to continue to be child, young person, and family-centred. And we want to learn from data, pilots, research, evidence, evaluations, so that we can keep improving service delivery and client outcomes. So like I said, many of you or all of you are already working in this way, but this really gives us a chance to put a framework around what that work looks like, so we can kind of keep on the same page and working in the same direction, contributing to learning and improving our services in these kind of key areas. An important thing to note about the service system outcomes, as Amanda mentioned earlier, sector development organisations obviously have a really key role to play in this area. So moving into the new specs, we now refer to organisations that deliver community sector coordination activities instead of community development organisations. And like I said, they're really key to service system outcomes. These organisations are helping TEI services to build their organisational capacity, to support coordination and collaboration, and they'll be contracted specifically to deliver activities in line with these service system outcomes. So their program logic will reflect, as Amanda said, both the community strengthening evidence, but also speak specifically to the service system outcomes and what they're doing to contribute to helping the sector along that path. Community sector coordination activities will no longer be recorded in decks. They'll now be recorded using the optional reporting tool, or what's called the optional reporting tool now, and in future in the specs will be called the community sector coordination reporting tool. So now onto program requirements. We've touched on some of these already, so I'll just focus in on, I think, kind of the important ones. First up, the flexible timeframes or flexibility. So we know from both the TEI evaluation that some providers have maintained historic program timeframes, and the new specifications make really clear that there are no timeframes in the TEI program, with the exception of Family Connect and Support, which does have a timeframe that's been extended, as Amanda mentioned, out to 6 months. So services in TEI should be really focused on tailoring the support that they provide to client needs, and they're encouraged to keep working with clients as long as is needed to achieve the outcomes that they're working towards. When we've talked about this in the sector so far, we've heard some concern and some feedback from providers about capacity to deliver on this, particularly within kind of your existing contract numbers. What's really important, and we want to point out, is that if needed, providers should be talking to their DCJ contract manager about the need, if any, to adjust contract outputs and numbers in their contract. That can happen at contract negotiation time, but it really can happen at any time during implementation. We want contracts to be flexible and responsive to the needs of clients, and we want to take a flexible approach to families and their needs. We know that that's what's going to be successful in achieving positive client outcomes. And just on that, in that first Aboriginal Community Partner Forum I spoke about earlier, we heard really loud and clear from ACCOs about how critical it is that once you've developed that sense of trust, or built that sense of trust and engagement with a client, the clients should have the choice around continuing to work with that service if that's what they want to do. So we think, having this as a program requirement and really emphasising flexibility and responsiveness is a way that we can enable that. We know that that's what's going to work. A couple of other program requirements to mention that are new. Effective engagement and assessment. So we've included this because we now have evidence through the Preventing Child Maltreatment Evidence Review about the importance of engagement. It's a core component. And we also have a common assessment tool that's been used by Family Connect and Support providers, and more recently by a number of TEI service providers. And we're getting some really early but positive feedback both from providers and from clients about how valuable and effective this tool is. So to continue along that line and keep building that capacity in the sector, we've included it in the program specifications and asked that any provider delivering comprehensive assessment uses the tool to do so. Like I said, we've got some great positive feedback so far, but what we're hoping is in this next phase, before it becomes part of the program specifications, that we continue to hear from you about how you're using it, how effective it is. Now's our chance to we need to make tweaks or changes we can. I know there's a great practice group that runs and we have lots of engagement from you as providers. Really glad to hear that, and we encourage that to continue, and we'd really love to hear your feedback on the tool. Couple more to mention: referral pathways and sector collaboration. That's something I'm sure you're all familiar with. We know that strong referral pathways and collaboration improve client experience and contribute to better outcomes. So we know that this happens through your regular partnerships, collaboration and networking. That's a really important part of what you deliver, and we want to see this in the program moving forward. We've called out referrals to early intervention universal services in the specifications. And that's because we've taken some of the learnings from the Supporting Families into Early Childhood Education project. And from that, we know that TEI providers are actually really well placed to identify opportunities and facilitate access for children and families into early childhood education. And of course, we know that the evidence says loud and clear that participation in early childhood education leads to long-term positive outcomes for children. So wherever possible, we're asking TEI providers to play a role in identifying those situations where they can assist in supporting children and families to access early childhood education. The last one on the list is free and accessible. I'm going to talk to that on the next slide, if you wouldn't mind moving me on there. Thank you. So this slide just talks to some of the key changes or updates we've made to the specs since we started our engagement with the sector. And of course, we know that's going to continue once you've had a chance to sort of read through them and give us more rich feedback. But just to mention a few now, the first one is that program requirement about free and accessible. And this relates to feedback we heard from the TEI evaluation that really told us we need to make it very explicit in the specifications that all services in TEI are free, and that providers should be looking to take active steps to make sure that their services are accessible. So the specs talk to that, and they provide some details about what that might look like, but I'm sure many of you know how to make it a service accessible and work in your community. So there's just some, ideas and guidance in the specs for you to consider. We've added an additional program requirement to strengthen our commitment to cultural safety for culturally and linguistically diverse individuals and communities. We heard that a lot through our contact with both DCJ commissioning and planning staff, and also the sector, about the importance of that in particular communities. So we've made that clearer in the specifications as well. And of course, that's something we expect that you're talking to your commissioning officers about during local planning when thinking about what your service will look like and who you'll deliver to. We tried to provide some additional clarification about target groups and who you need to be working with, particularly the inclusion of new ones. We've put greater focus on an integration on family violence and its impacts, considering just how much of a focus that's become, and the role of early intervention in that critical policy area. We've updated language around timeframes. Previously, we talked about open timeframes. We've shifted that to talk about flexible timeframes. And we've added some clarification about program logics and how they should be applied. And just a reminder, I think Amanda mentioned it earlier, but we do have those resources coming very soon, which is updated program logic templates, which are quite user-friendly. I've seen them. They've got some drop-down menus and ways to make it much more easier for you to work with the evidence that we have and put together a program logic for your service. And also the updates to the e-learning module, which you'd all be familiar with now, but now we've got the benefit of this additional evidence. We've built that into how you work that into your program logic. So that's it for the key changes. Now on to the next steps. So as you would be well aware, this current feedback period consultation period is open and through until the 16th of August. We know that there's been some concerns raised about that timeframe, particularly your ability to give feedback in the context of the TEI evaluation. We know that's a really important piece of this process, and we do want to give you that opportunity to read and digest the TEI evaluation reports and provide your feedback with that in mind. So look, we're still expecting the TEI interim reports to be available around July this year, the interim report, sorry, and the final evaluation report towards the end of the year. We can extend the consultation timeframe as needed, and we will, to ensure that you've got that time that you need. What we'll do is revisit that timeframe a little closer to the 16th of August, just to give us, so we've got a better idea of how much extra time we need to tag on to the end. But I guess I want to make really clear that we're not intending to finalise these specifications until the end of the year. So that's about having an opportunity to reflect on those evaluation findings and use that as part of what informs these specifications. For now, we really encourage you to use the specifications as you see them in front of you as the basis for kind of moving forward with your service design and planning. And of course, as we get feedback through this process, we'll be updating the specifications accordingly. So that's kind of it, the sort of next steps. I know we're about to open up for some questions, and one has already kind of come in. So I might ask this question now and ask Anthony to come online and speak to it. So Anthony, there's a question. Some organisations are still feeling a bit unclear as to whether to ensure they have their existing work reflected in a variation of contract before recommissioning. Can you clarify and advise on that?
Yeah, look, as a lot of people will know, we do have a very streamlined contract variation clause in the TEI program. And if you do want to vary your contract, we would encourage you to talk to your district commissioning and planning officer around that. And certainly, if you wish to vary your contract now or any time between now and the end of June 24, you can certainly do that. You need to obviously talk to your district commissioning and planning team, but obviously you need to negotiate that change. And if the district commissioning and planning team agree, absolutely you can change that. There's no real impediment around recommissioning and changing varying your contract now. We've spoken to all our district commissioning and planning teams and managers and directors around this as well, and they're very aware. And we'll certainly be able to kind of talk to you about varying a contract if you wish to.
Thanks for that, Anthony. This is something that has come up on a number of occasions for FAMS as well, and we thought it was important that organisations heard directly from you that if they want to vary their contract, they should be able to do so and tidy up before going into recommissioning. We're now just going to quickly get an overview of what FAMS has heard from the sector, and I'm going to just pass over to Lisa, our Sector Development Officer, to give us a bit of an overview of what we've heard so far before we move into general questions.
Hi everyone. Yes, alongside Lauren and the rest of the team been out listening what's been happening on the ground. I guess initially from me, there's a lot of support for the streamlining of the activity types index and the reduce of admin. It's very important. We acknowledge that does cause a pain point in particular, so that's been quite positive. For me, on the flip side as well, is that sometimes without the evidence, we can't actually tell bean counters of the importance of the work that you're doing. So, for example, in material aid, we did hear that it's maybe happening in family capacity building, but we also know that material aid is happening within social support, social activities, community engagement, and that's a missing link for me. Is we know with the flexibility during COVID, people were coming to organisations asking for support. That hasn't gone away. We know the financial issues that people are facing is actually increasing on top of the financial costs that agencies are finding with no extra funding to the sector. We are still lobbying in that space, so we are hearing it loud and clear that funding is an issue and resources are scarce. the flexibility of contracts. You can stay with a client support a lot longer, but if you've got more clients staying with you, potentially you have less ability to actually address new clients coming to the service as well. So that's the areas I was particularly stood out for me.
Thanks,
do you
Lisa.
like the sorry?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have some more? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so and also is around the evidence around using I did hear like the 100 different models within the playgroup and education space. That's really positive, because I did hear that people are developing their own programs, whether it was around their own local community of refugees or cold, or even parents who have got children with disabilities, autism and ADHD, developing those programs. That have been a lot of work's got in that space for the local agencies, and acknowledging that work still needs to carry on. They're my main points. And also one last point is around the community development. We know that there's a lot of issues around acknowledging that work, and it is still within the specs. It's just talking about how it can have that more valued across the sector. That's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Lisa. And Lauren?
Thanks, Susan. I will be quite brief because I know this sector is really keen to get their questions out. But one thing that came to mind when I was reviewing it was that I was really pleased to see, as I'm sure many of the sector were, that children and young people affected by mental health conditions were identified as one of the key target groups for TEI and FCS. One concern that we've been hearing from the sector is that there's been a significant reduction in TEI counselling roles, with services moving instead to either youth work or child and youth family casework type roles. Youth workers and child and family youth caseworkers are incredibly important to increasing safety, but they do hold a different but often complementary skill set to counsellors. And we've also seen some really excellent outcomes when these differing roles collaborate, and they're able to titrate support as needed for the client, and also often working with crisis mental health services to create a really great ecosystem of care around children and young people. So what we're really hearing is that there's a bit of a gap in terms of the mental health support needs that were previously being met by those specialist and child, youth and family counsellors. And so I'd just be curious to hear that, given this is an identified target group, is DCJ hoping for an increase in counsellors to meet this need in this commissioning cycle? And will you be looking to develop an evidence review to help inform how the sector best responds to the needs of children and young people affected by mental health conditions?
Thanks, Lisa. We might put that question into the wrap. I think it's really important, as you said, that we go straight to the sector. I'm not quite sure how many hands are up. Bronte and Kaz are going to manage those questions, but we will keep that one and bring it into the mix as well. So questions, please. Sorry, I can't see everyone, so I'm going to ask Bronte to just let us know who's first.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll move back to the top of the chat and we'll work our way through, but I can see Lisa has their hand up if you'd like to ask a question, Lisa.
Hi, is that me?
Yes.
Yes.
I've got a few questions.
That's
I
it.
guess the main question I have is, what is the process for feedback on the draft specifications currently? Because it's not there at the moment, and I'm sure I really do want to read the evaluation of the TEI prior to doing that, but I'm one of these people with a number of concerns about the specifications. So I'd like to know how we feedback that now, really.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for your question. I'm happy to address that. So we have a few ways that we're happy to take feedback. There is a form that we have put together that has some questions where you can provide feedback on the specifications. And if you go to our recommissioning page where there's the draft program specifications, there will also be a link to that form that you can complete. And I don't know if somebody can add that into the chat, or we could try to do that.
Yep.
But that would be one way. The other way is, of course, we're happy to accept feedback if you want to email our TEI inbox. So we're flexible, and we're, of course, happy to hear your thoughts as soon as possible, with the understanding that, of course, you may have additional ones once you read the evaluation.
And I'll just throw in as well, Lisa, we have started the engagement process earlier this year, getting out to different forums and meetings, and we're going to continue doing that throughout July. So we've got some local ones set up, I think, in Murrumbidgee, Far West and Western New South Wales, Northern New South Wales, Southwest Sydney, and we're very open to coming to other forums if you'd like us to come face to face and hear your feedback. And of course, like meetings such as these are the opportunity once you've had a chance to read them and to tell us what you think. So there's multiple ways that you can contribute, and hopefully that will give you a chance.
Okay, I'm not sure whether you came to the Illawarra before, but that was mainly similar to this, where you've given us the information on the feedback rather than the opportunity to feedback, but that's fine. Thank you.
Other questions?
Thanks for that, Lisa. I've just moved back up to the top of the chat. Hopefully we can get through everyone's questions because there are a lot, but if not, we'll try and make sure that everyone's questions can be answered after. But I do have a question here asking about if TEI and FCS are both in the same community, that they will not be merged.
I can probably answer that question. It's Anthony. Yeah, look, both the Family Connect and Support Program and the TEI program are being merged together. We currently have FCS delivering services across all of New South Wales as a statewide coverage, as there is with TEI. So at the moment, we currently have FCS delivering services in the same communities as TEI. The intention is to merge them into one program to better integrate those programs and ensure that service delivery is more seamless for families and young people accessing the program. So the intention is to kind of bring them together. All current FCS providers already deliver TEI as well, so that's the other reason.
Thanks, Anthony. I've also got a question here asking if the commitment to the community strengthening stream will remain the same.
Yeah, I can answer that one as well. Yeah, absolutely. The commitment to the community strengthening stream will remain the same. In fact, I think if you have a look at the program specifications under community strengthening, particularly with the evidence work that we've done recently, I think we've really kind of strengthened our kind of evidence base for community strengthening. It was already there in the first place. The evidence review that we've done kind of really reflected the work that's happening across the sector. Our commitment to kind of delivering in community strengthening remains unchanged.
Great, thank you. I've also got a comment here mentioning that it's difficult as the evaluation is not available to services to review in conjunction with any changes to the service specs, and wondering if that will still be released shortly.
Yeah, we can answer that one. Yep. We're expecting the interim report for the TEI evaluation to be published towards the end of July. That's our expectation and our hope. So that's, I guess, your chance to read that report and to use that as, the basis for informing your feedback. Then the final report is towards the end of the year. At this stage, we're hoping it will be around October. And as we kind of mentioned, we want to make sure that you feel you've got time to read those two reports and think about them in the context of the program specifications and things like service types. Have your chance to read those and provide feedback on that basis. Amanda, would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's pretty accurate, is that we're open to providing that additional time so that you do have the chance to read those evaluations and provide your feedback. And we appreciate your frustration as well and not having had that available already. We share in that. And unfortunately, which you probably have heard if you've attended our other presentations, is that because the TEI evaluation does take information from the human services data set, that there are very strict legislative guidelines around how those reports can be approved and that information can be included, and that sits outside of our control, which is one of the main reasons why there is that additional time frame, whereas the Family Connected Support evaluation doesn't include that, which is why that was made available sooner.
Great, thank you. We've also got a question asking about an ETA for the finalised FCS supported playgroup rapid evidence scan.
I can take this question. Yes, it's very close. Last I heard from my colleagues in our research areas that it would be published in early July. So the first week of July is what our hope is, fingers crossed, and we'll keep pushing and working towards making that happen. And when it is released, we'll do a TEI form so that you all know that it's there and available for you to read.
Thank you. We've got a comment here talking about being concerned about the defunding of crucial supports for parents of deaf children and the impacts that that's having, and a need for comprehensive research support, and also the lack of support for deaf parents of deaf children. And just wondering if this will be addressed in the early years strategy, and how will this be addressed when pivotal services are at risk of closing their doors?
Yeah, I can answer that. Well, I can talk to that question. I did read those comments, and I just wanted to check. The early years strategy is a strategy that's being led by the Australian government. It's not a New South Wales government strategy, so I'm not sure whether the defunding of organisations you're referring to relates to Australian government funding programs or anything to do with the early years strategy. The Targeted Early Intervention program works with families, children, young people and communities in need. We haven't certainly defunded any services, that kind of work with deaf children, as kind of you put in your comments. I'm not sure whether the question you're asking is in the right place, but happy to be corrected if that's wrong.
Thanks, Anthony. And following on from that, there was also just a suggestion that the mental health category in the specs should also cover physical and intellectual as well.
Yeah, look, those target groups, or the target groups with the kind of focus on those specific client cohorts, are really a reflection of the work that Their Futures Matter did in terms of kind of client cohorts where there's kind of high cost and kind of high bad poor outcomes where early intervention doesn't occur. So they're really a reflection of kind of what the data and the research and evidence tells us around where we should be kind of putting extra investment and extra focus in our early intervention program. And that the cohort around children with mental issues as well came across from the Family Connection Support Program. Look, we can take that feedback on board and listen to what everybody else has got to say about that.
Thanks, Anthony. There's also a question about the list of draft parenting programs. I'm wondering if that list is in addition to the lists in program activity 3 on page 22 for supported playgroups.
I can speak to that. So the list it's a draft list of parenting programs. It wouldn't appear in the draft specifications. It's in addition to that, and it was just published today. So if you go on to the recommissioning side, specifically the draft specifications, you'll see another link that has the list of parenting programs.
And the supported playgroups list that you do see in the specs, that's come from the evidence scan that is due to be published very soon. So it's drawn directly from that there, and they are indeed 2 separate lists. Yeah.
Great. We've also got a comment here about not hearing much about community development. It seems to be narrowing further about individual client outcomes rather than whole of community outcomes. And there's been quite a lot of likes agreeing that concerns about community strengthening really meaning direct client service delivery.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Yeah, I think I've kind of referred a bit to a question similar to this earlier. Look, I can reassure everybody there's absolutely no reduction in our focus and emphasis in the community strengthening space. It still continues to be an important part of the program. Community strengthening activities are not about individual client service delivery. Individual client service delivery typically occurs in a wellbeing and safety stream. I'd really encourage you to have a look at the updated service specifications. The kind of information in there around community strengthening describes the community strengthening approach, talks about the importance of social infrastructure, the importance of community development. So from the department's perspective, absolutely no reduction in that, and no kind of changing of the focus for individual clients in that space. It certainly is about community development. When we did the TEI reform 5 years ago, we intentionally designed into the program the community strengthening stream because we know that that's important, and continuing feedback from the sector through the evaluation from clients continues to support that. So I don't know if it reinforces the kind of work we've done to kind of strengthen that part of the program.
Thanks, Anthony. I think this is something we've heard quite a bit, and there's a comment in here about acknowledging that services should be free, but as costs are rising, insurance increases, award increases, super increases, that we cannot continue to meet the community needs just based on TEI funding, or we must reduce our services, and just a want for that to be addressed by DCJ.
Yeah, I can talk to that as well. Look, I think that's a fair point in terms of we do acknowledge certainly the demand, the increased demand that TEI services are experiencing, not only the demand from people accessing services, but certainly the cost of delivering services, being able to attract and retain workforce, and the costs engaged with that have all increased. There's been no increase in TEI funding for over 10 years, so certainly, absolutely, there's demand and cost drivers in the program. It continues to be a challenge that we have to manage together with the sector. Unfortunately, there's no new funding for recommissioning. I think at a number of forums that I've attended over the last couple of months, I've certainly kind of reinforced that. Certainly, when we sit down to renegotiate contracts, we certainly need to take into account those cost pressures and make sure that the program is sustainable, and that the activities and outputs that we negotiate with you kind of are sustainable within the funding that you have. Unfortunately, it's a challenge that we have to keep managing, and it's one that I know that everybody on this call certainly is aware of as well.
Thanks, Anthony. I've got a question here about will there be changes to the CPOs or additional training for current ones to enable them to grasp what we're doing on the ground and in evidence-based ways to measure the work? This is, in relation to the proposed changes for people involved in sector development roles.
So you're talking about, is that question about the DCJ staff, or is that?
Yeah, my understanding, it says, will there be changes to the CPOs responsible for overriding these orgs or additional training for current ones to enable them to grasp what we do and evidence-based ways to measure this work?
Yeah, look, certainly we continue to work with our district colleagues, commissioning and planning colleagues. We meet with them regularly on a regular basis, fortnightly actually, around recommissioning. There's a range of support that we provide centrally around kind of recommissioning and particularly around the evidence work that we've rolled out recently across the program. So it is a focus on, centrally our team, who manage the program, to continue to support our district colleagues. We do have some program logic training material that will come online shortly for the sector and also for our staff in districts. It's an updating of the kind of e-module some of you may have seen a couple of years ago, which kind of takes into account the new kind of evidence work we've done around core components and the program logic template. So that will kind of be a helpful resource as well for people.
Great. Someone's asked here if we're still restricted to only servicing the allocated area, particularly on the Central Coast. They have clients coming from all over the coast, particularly from areas that aren't being serviced by a DCJ community strengthening service.
Look, that's probably really a question that you'll need to address when you do your contract negotiations. I mean, the local planning will occur, and all those kind of priority setting conversations will happen, looking at needs. And then once the district plan's approved, obviously, we'll sit down with providers and negotiate contracts. And as part of that negotiation, service coverage is part of that. So I would probably suggest that's probably an opportunity to kind of have to raise, coverage of kind of where or how you think you can deliver services across a particular geographical area, whether it's increasing your scope or decreasing your scope.
Thanks, Anthony. Lisa, I wonder if we want to jump across to Menti for a little bit and answer some of those. We've been in the chat for a while. Just want to try and make sure everyone gets an opportunity to ask a question. If you want to scroll back up to the top and we can go through those.
We've probably got a chance for maybe 2 or 3 more questions. But be rest assured that everything will be collated, and anything that isn't answered, we will be forwarding to DCJ for response, and we'll publish those responses. So keep adding them in, even if they might not come up today.
Okay, I'm having trouble scrolling. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. Is everyone seeing the pulse check now?
No,
Okay.
we're seeing the
Okay, great.
question and answers. Your turn to ask.
Yeah.
What we might do if we're unable to access those right now, we will commit to everybody here today that we will collate all of the comments and questions both in the chat and in the Mentimeter, and we will collate them and provide them to DCJ for response, and we will publish those responses as soon as they return. So please don't be concerned about that. I would like to talk about our next steps. So we are planning, that's the next slide. And we can, in terms of our next steps, we're asking if you'd like to join us for a sector-only conversation. So this is a conversation where we won't have DCJ involved, but we can have a bit of a safe, deeper dive into the specifications and provide a collective voice for the sector as a major component of our consultation process with DCJ, as well as for providing a briefing to Minister Washington. So you can use the QR code there to register for that meeting, and it will also be part in there. We'll be asking for expressions of interest for a working group to consolidate and review the feedback from the sector. Lisa, sorry, you were going to put the pulse check up, so I don't know whether you can go back. So we can just check in to see after today's session how you are feeling in terms of the specifications.
And can I just also add to that next session is going to be the kickoff, the TEI FCS network, and the new name it's going to become. So we are going to be focusing on that for our very first session because it's our important place to start.
So here we go. We're hoping that this session has been helpful for you. I was actually looking for the pulse check, Lisa. But yes, please drop in. Oh.
Come back.
We wanted to, sorry, we're all in separate rooms here at FAM, and we want a bit of a pulse check just to see what the pulse check was at the beginning, and then looking at where we are now as to whether we've created more of a positive feeling about it, or from this conversation more concerns have been raised. So we will use that to be able to inform DCJ as to how much more work they need to do to alleviate any concerns that the sector has. And obviously part of that will be our meeting in July to really dig down as to what the concerns are, what are the positive things, and what do we really need some more information on. So let me know when they start to slow down and we can do a quick check to see how this session went for everyone. So I think from memory, we've got more concerns.
Yeah, there's more concerns
now. Yeah. So that's great to hear that the session has really brought up some questions for the sector, and it's important for us to do some further consultation. So really invite you to come along to the session in July, where we'll be able to really dig down a little bit more and consolidate what the sector's views are to the feedback to DCJ. But obviously there's also the opportunity to you to do that as organizations in your own right. But it'd be great to have some people involved in that more of a deep dive, so we can make sure all those questions are answered that we talked about today. Okay, I think we've got the message that we've got more concerns. We just want to then just check in to see whether you found this session helpful. I think we perhaps will have a bit of a similar response. We're hoping the session was helpful, even if it is in raising the correct questions and concerns, so that you feel that you can be part of that consultation more going forward. So yes, we're getting some feedback that there's more questions. And that's what consultation is about. It's making sure that we're open and transparent, and we have that time. I think really, Anthony and DCJ, that extension of the feedback is going to want to be one of the first concerns the sector has. And I think it's something that we need to be starting to talk about now. And I know that you want to wait and see when the evaluation is out, but I think the earlier the sector hears about the time frame they have, you are going to alleviate some of those concerns. we're really glad to hear that the session has been helpful. And I would like to thank everyone again for their time today. The session has been recorded and will be available on our website and in our wrap next week. As stated earlier, we will be collating all the questions and sending them to DCJ, and we'll asking them for a time frame as when they'll be back. And I'm sure that they'll put some of those into their frequently asked questions section, and we will make sure they're published and available to you as well. The FAMS team is really looking forward to supporting our sector through the recommissioning process and beyond. Our job is to support you. So please sign up to our weekly wrap, follow us on LinkedIn, and let us know what are the sorts of things that you want some more information on going forward. It's exciting to see that the name change is out for voting, and I'm really interested to see what the end result will be. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next sector conversation. Oh, thank you for the feedback that people are putting in the chat. It's always good to hear that we're adding value to the sector.
Thanks for having us, everyone.
Yes,
See you soon.
I think you'll be hearing from us very soon, Claire. Do you want to put the QR code up again, Lisa? Can that happen for joining the network? We will put it into the wrap as well, but there's a scan there if you want to join our TEI and Family Connect and Support Network kickoff, where the focus will be on these specifications and a deeper dive, and really asking our sector to help us in consolidating and providing and privileging the voice of the sector to ensure that you are heard loud and clear, and we amplify your voice, not only DCJ, but to Minister Washington as well. It's great to see so many people here today. And I'd like to quickly say thanks to the amazing team at FAMS for bringing this all together for you.